welcome to episode number 14 of the Who Am I podcast with the Southside Church of Christ. This is Bryan Dill.
I'm Jackson Wells.
We are so glad that you have joined us for another episode of this podcast as we want to continue to investigate how to maintain our Christian identity in the world in which we live. Today, as we get started with this episode, our lighter part of the conversation, I'm going to be sharing some random facts with Jackson.
I love this. This is my favorite segment.
Now, these are random facts. The term fact might be used a little loosely because I didn't do a ton of research.
Boy.
So if somebody listening, if you feel like the need to dispute some of these facts, leave that in the comments, and we may have to correct. So we'll see. I don't know. These are so random.
This is gonna be great.
If you have evidence that these are not true, I'd say we'll go with that. Jackson, first of all, have you ever been to New York?
I have not. Furthest north I've ever been, I think, is Washington, D.C. No, I take that. I've been to northern Ohio for a wedding, which I think is higher than Washington, D.C.
Yeah, it's right there with about Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania area.
Yeah, we're right on the border.
Okay. So, did you know that you are 10 times more likely to be bitten by a New Yorker than by a shark?
I did not know that. Well, let's say,
what in the world does that say?
I have been to the beach a lot in my lifetime.
Right.
When I say a lot, I mean like probably once a year on average.
Okay.
Never been bitten by a shark. I've seen sharks like on the shore where we were swimming.
Sure.
But,
really?
Yeah, like a fisherman caught a shark.
And
okay.
Like
it was like a.
That's pretty cool.
It was probably a 4 to 5 foot shark. Like it wasn't a little baby.
That's awesome.
Yeah, never gotten bit. I don't even know if I've been touched by a fish.
Right. Okay. And yet,
you're saying that I go to New York, there's like a 50% chance of me getting bit by a New Yorker.
I don't know what that equates to percentage-wise, but I mean, I know we have some people who listen to this show, apparently, that are from New York. This show is pretty regularly downloaded by the state of New York. I think they're fourth on our most frequently downloaded state. So if you are listening to this show and you're from New York, I'm very curious, why are you biting each other so much?
Or if you need to get out, and escape the biting that is going on, just let us know.
Also, and connected with that fact was it said you are also more likely to be bitten by a New Yorker than by a rat in New York.
Wow. What is going on up there?
I don't know. Again,
see, this
is not true.
This could be total.
This is not true.
Like,
somebody share
who's going around reporting rat bites? You know,
right?
Like,
well, that's true.
who?
Maybe you need a rabies shot. I don't know.
Oh my goodness, I don't know what to think.
I don't either. Okay, all right. Random fact number 2. I know that you like cheese.
I do like cheese, yes. Cheez-Its specifically.
Cheez-Its? Okay.
One time I was at Waffle House and they were talking about cheese. They were like, I really like cheddar. I really like American. I was like, I like squeezed cheese. And this was the people behind the counter were discussing the type of cheeses that they like. And I said, I like squeezed cheese. And they lost it. They're like, who is this dummy?
Yeah. So, did you know that if you play music...
This is not true. I guarantee this is not true.
You play music to a cheese wheel.
What?
The music choice impacts the flavor.
No. What scientist has sat down and...
Okay, what's so stupid about this is that there was a study done.
No.
In 2019... They played classical, rock, electronic, and hip-hop cheese to different cheese wheels.
Okay.
And hip-hop. The hip-hop wheel came out having the strongest flavor and aroma.
Oh my goodness!
Now, part of me says
How
there have to be other factors
how
involved.
scientific? Yeah, I need you to send me that. How scientific was this? Like, oh my goodness! I don't know.
Who in
Maybe
the right mind feels the need to suddenly say, I wonder what this cheese would taste like if I played it some Tchaikovsky.
okay. So this I've heard of this before, but with plants, where if you play music to your plants,
Okay, sure.
I've even heard
But
people
those
say,
are living things.
but I've also heard people say that if you like talk to your plants, like encourage your plants, you can
You'll
do
get
it.
locked up because you're insane.
One, that's the first. That's going to come after. But they say that helps your plant grow, and so again, internet
Maybe.
people take this to the next level, and so they'll be
About
like
cheese.
they'll be like talking to their plant or whatever, and then they have another plant that they're doing the opposite side of the experiment. Is if you talk down to your plant,
If you insult your plant,
you stupid flower.
you're the worst flower I've ever had. Oh my goodness. Random fact number 3.
Oh man.
So I think both of us, we drive a decent amount.
Yeah.
Day to day, week to
Yeah.
week, month to month. When you're out on the interstate,
Mm-hmm.
you're driving, there's white lines that divide the lanes.
Yes.
It's not a solid white line. It's, I don't know.
The dashed
Sure.
line.
How long do you think those dashes are?
This is one of those things where you don't realize it until you stand right next to one.
Uh-huh.
It's like a stoplight. You don't realize how big a stoplight is until it falls on your car and
That's
crushes
true.
you.
That's true.
I'm going to go there 10 feet.
That's exactly right.
Really?
They're 10 feet, and it's 30 feet between dashes.
Really? I wouldn't have guessed that.
So, that's one of those where I would have said, I don't know, 3 or 4 feet long,
Yeah, when it's perspective, like if you
Right.
go, like the arrows, if you look at an arrow from the top angle that's like painted onto the road, it looks oblong and weird.
Yes.
But the way you're sitting in your car, the perspective that you have, it makes it look like a normal arrow, which is
Right,
which was
right.
cool that they were able to figure that out.
Okay, last one. Last random piece of information. Talk about animals.
Okay.
All right? I like animals.
I do like animals, like dogs.
Did you know that giraffes and humans have the same number of neck bones?
I did know that. I did know that.
What in the world? How gigantic must each neck bone be in a giraffe's neck?
Large.
I mean,
So this
sitting here thinking, my neck is
it-
that 5-6 inches long?
yeah. Well, I wonder is it the same number of neck bones or is it the same number of vertebrae?
Well, I believe that's the same thing.
Well, isn't vertebrae your entire spine?
Well, okay. Oh, I see what you're saying. Neck bones is what I read,
Okay.
so I don't know.
Well, either way,
somebody who
there's-
knows the correct
there's-
information, feel free to share.
There's something in there. I've heard that. I've heard that we have the same
Yeah.
number of those types of bones, which is again ridiculous because giraffes. Is it giraffes? Is that the plural?
It has to.
It has to be. Yeah, giraffes. It's insane. It just is. Well, I like giraffes. Do you know that elephants can't jump?
I've heard that about a few, like hippopotamus, rhinoceros, elephants. Something about their knees.
Yeah.
they can't do it.
Yeah. There's also an animal that can't walk backwards.
That's also a rhinoceros.
Rhinoceros.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So all our
Random animal facts.
all our zoologist friends
Yeah,
just
yeah.
call in and correct us.
Yeah, they will. Because there's a decent chance that at least half of what we have said is not right.
I'm curious if all of what we said is wrong.
I still. Why are you playing music to cheese?
Yeah. I'm gonna go to like a cheese tasting or whatever and be like, is this the hip hop cheese?
Is this
Was it
hip-hop cheese or the electronic cheese?
was it Jay-Z or Eminem?
Oh, good grief. All right, so we're going to try now to move into the meat of the week as best we can. And today's question is, am I a worrier? Now, if you clicked on this thinking that was an A instead of an O, This is not an episode about Am I a Warrior?
Which would be a fun episode.
Maybe later that would be a good episode. But today we're talking about Am I a Worrier? Am I someone who worries a lot? Of course, a lot is a subjective phrase.
Yeah, it is.
What might be a lot for someone might not seem like a lot for somebody else.
Right.
And maybe how you deal with that differently. But I imagine that regardless of what you consider to be a lot of worrying, I imagine every one of us at some time in life has struggled with worry.
Absolutely.
I know I have. I know that there have been times when it has been stressful and I'm worried about what might happen or what could happen, those types of things. So let's start here, Jackson. What do you see as some of the typical causes for our worries? Why do people worry?
So the first thing I think that you can categorize most worry, if you can't control it, that is where a lot of worry comes from.
Okay. Yeah.
If
things that are out of our control.
Yeah, and we talked about this recently. We talked about, I have no power as to what happens in Russia and Ukraine and
Right.
the Middle East. I have no power
That's
over
right.
that. But man, I still worry about that. Like, I'd be lying to you if I'd never thought, like, well, what if I get drafted? That's something that when I take a step back from, it's like, well, you get drafted. You can't worry about it. Like this, that you
not a lot
can't
you can do
control.
about it, right?
Exactly. A lot of the things that I see kids, it's interesting when working with kids, you talked about there are some things that people worry about that might not be a big deal for other ones. Working with kids, you get the whole array. When you work with teens anyways, you got some
Right.
that are worried about the little things, like the amount of hours that they're able to spend on their phone per day.
Right.
And then you've got some kids who are, worrying about, okay, well, where am I going to go to school? And sometimes there's things that are out of your control about the decisions that you make there. And then you've got some that are even worried about things like, well, my grandparents' salvation, I'm worried about it. And then you're like,
Sure.
it can cause a lot of anxiety. So it typically, from what I see, if you're worrying, there's a good chance that it is something that's out of your control.
Yeah, and I think that's part of what feeds the worry to begin with.
Yeah.
Is because you start dwelling on what might happen, and that list gets longer and longer
Yeah.
and longer the more you dwell on it because you have no control over
Yeah.
it, because you're not able to intervene in any way.
Yeah.
And it's the things are going to transpire, and you can't do anything about it, and you're just stuck. You know?
Like the concept of endless possibilities
Oh man,
is real. Like there are endless possibilities.
Right.
But there is only going to be one thing that happens. Whatever situation it is. There's only going to be one thing that happens.
Right.
So you can dwell on all the endless possibilities and really worry yourself sick,
you can.
or you cannot worry about the things that you can't control. Which I'm sitting here saying this like I'm some person who doesn't ever worry. I worry all the time, and then I'm constantly reminded, if it's not in my control, then there's nothing I can do about it. There's no reason to worry.
Like you said, that's challenging. That's a difficult thing for us to do, to just set it aside. It's easier said than done.
Oh, absolutely.
But it is a good reminder for us that, hey, you can't control this, so what are you going to accomplish by worrying about it?
Yeah.
And I think really that's what Jesus says in part of the Sermon on the Mount in Matthew 6. You
Yep.
know, which one of you by worrying is able to add anything to their life?
Yeah.
It just doesn't accomplish anything.
I think, and you in our notes, you got some statistics on worrying anxiety. I am curious if Jesus knew that worrying takes days off.
Oh,
And that's why he was saying,
Right.
like, worrying is just going to make your life shorter. And if that's what you're worried about, then stop.
all right. So what else? What are some other things that we typically worry about?
There are some things that we can control that we worry about. Again, going back to our to the kids that I teach, and I'm glad that it's something that we talk about, but salvation is something that we talk about a lot, and it's something that kids worry about. What's beautiful about it is we do have control over our salvation. Well, sort of. We have the choice to put on Christ and enter into a relationship with Him, serve Him, be Christians, and because of that, we have salvation. The scary thing is that Christ didn't have to die for us. God doesn't have to show us mercy. He doesn't have to forgive us of our sins. But He does. It's written down, like He did. So there's no reason for you to worry that you don't have salvation, because if you're living your life in Christ, what do you have to worry about?
Right. And I think sometimes people get it in their heads that it's one mistake and all of a sudden, I'm doomed. And that's not really the way the scriptures define those who have wandered away from the truth. That's not really what we see.
If that were the case, then and people understood it that way, there would be a lot of people walking around miserable.
Right.
Because it's like, well, I messed up 20 years ago. Here I am. No, that's not how it works.
Also, when it comes to the things that we can have some measure of control over, we struggle with the future.
Yes. Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. We go back to the teens. Where am I going to go to college? Because that's something that we really worry about when we're 17, 18 years old, because where we go to, we think anyways, that where we go to college is going to determine what job we have. And what job I have is going to determine my level of happiness or joy or whatever. It's going to determine who I'm able to marry and stuff like that. I can choose where I want to go to college for the most part. Sure. But if I don't make the right choice, I better look out.
What about my major? All these. Yeah, it's interesting how we get wrapped up in decision after decision after decision, and how this impacts the future, and what's going to happen if this happens, and then what about this, and then
it's the endless possibilities.
What's funny about that, though, is that even though that is something that is not completely out of our control, what we forget is there is still an element that's not under our control. Mm-hmm. And things are going to happen that you did not see coming. And it's going to change everything.
Absolutely.
And, I mean, I just can't count how many times I can go back and look at what I thought was going to happen and what I thought I had planned out with just life in general. And what my wife and I thought was going to be the life that we were going to live, and whether it was where we thought we were going to be living, or what kinds of jobs either of us would have, or how many kids we would end up having, or when we would have kids, and just so many things, and so many times it's been. Well, now we've got whatever plans we had, we got to change it all.
Yeah. Because
this happened.
Yeah.
And whatever we thought was going to happen, that's all out the window, because now we're going this completely different direction. And
sometimes that in and of itself can be worry-inducing.
It can be. Yeah, you're right.
But when you've got the mindset of Christ, and those things that change sometimes don't seem as big of a deal. Maybe.
Right.
It's like I know some of your story in regards to the job you have now, and like how you got to this point, and your son is in my youth group. Like I know some of the aspects of that story. And you still, like, I'm hearing you talk about, like, this is what my job was going to be. This is how many kids we were going to have. This is where we were going to live.
Yeah.
Well, you've got a job, you've got the kid, and you're working,
right.
And you live here. So,
it may not have been exactly what we thought it was going to be, but things change.
Yeah.
Somewhere along the way, you have to learn that you have to be able to adjust.
Yeah.
And be okay with that.
Yeah.
And also be okay with the unknown that's out there, because there's always going to be some element of that out there. So let me share a couple statistics that about worry, and I think worry and anxiety kind of go hand in hand in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
And so what I found interesting was that there was a 2020 survey done, and
Was it 20? I mean, you may not be able to answer this question.
like pre or post COVID.
Yeah, was it pre or post COVID?
I honestly don't know.
Okay.
So at least before COVID, and it may be worse than this now, I don't know. 62% of the people who responded to this survey said they have experienced some degree of anxiety.
Yeah, that doesn't surprise me at all.
And so I think of anxiety as like a little bit of a step beyond just I'm just concerned about something.
Yeah.
Anxiety is definitely over in the worry, pit of your stomach. You may be losing some sleep. You may be, that sort of thing. 62%. I wouldn't be shocked if it was even higher than that now.
Yeah, I was going to say, since the pandemic, it's,
right.
I don't know, people have realized how fragile life is.
I think so.
And that's honestly probably caused a lot of people, maybe who don't know Christ, to start to worry.
Sure. So the other piece of information that I thought was interesting, because I would not have necessarily guessed this, was that of those 62%, anxiety and worry was more common in women than in men, and it's almost 2 to 1.
Really? Men are lying.
It may be that there is some of that. The guys, aren't willing to admit that they're worried about that. But like I said, that kind of surprised me.
That does.
And maybe generationally, that change is going to adjust back more toward the median, toward the middle.
Yeah.
With people your age or something.
Well, I'm thinking of this anecdotally, and I have no research to back up what I'm saying. I think of social media as one of the biggest problems with anxiety being prevalent in society today.
Because, sure. It just contributes so much to it.
And we've talked about this before, but the comparison game, the comparison game causes you to have a lot of anxiety.
Absolutely.
And it's always about stuff that doesn't matter, like where you're going on vacation, what kind of house you got, what kind of car you drive, what kind of clothes you wear. Like none of that really matters, which is funny because Jesus says that. And is it Matthew 6, when he talks about worrying, not adding to your life?
Don't worry about the clothes that you wear, and don't worry about the food that you're going to eat, and all these kinds of things.
Those are the two main things that people post. They're like, check out my new drip,
Right.
And then they're taking a picture of their food. Like those are the two things.
Why don't I get to go out to those kinds of restaurants?
Yeah, and those are the two things that we want the world to know about us.
Right. Look at how great my life is because of all these things I'm doing or seeing or spending money on.
You're either doing that because you have a lot of money and you want everybody to know, or you are trying to catch up and you're trying to show off what you have. And that in and of itself is anxiety-inducing, because we have this idea of what our life is supposed to be like, and we can curate it to look like that on social media.
Absolutely.
But then we find ourselves living a lie, and then that in and of itself is another anxiety-inducing thing, because then we have to figure out, well, who saw the post? Like I can live like I want to live by myself, but when I'm in front of them, I have to live a certain kind of way. You start living this and I can see how if that is the reason why 2 to 1 women struggle with anxiety a little bit more than men. I don't think men care as much about what people are seeing them as. They're a little bit, for example, I don't care if anybody judges me about me playing disc golf, because I love disc golf. I don't care what you say.
Right.
But I can see how perhaps that might affect a girl.
Right.
Especially a teenage girl, when their whole like, and this is true for guys
social
as well.
Circles.
We seek the approval of other people.
Yeah.
Seeking the approval of other people, guess what? That can be anxiety inducing. Everything can be anxiety inducing.
Oh, sure.
But when we look for Christ, we realize, okay, none of this matters, what I'm worrying about.
Right. And I think that what we hope that you have heard us saying thus far in this episode is that no matter who you are, you're likely to encounter struggles with worry and anxiety because of the way the world is, and as Christians, we're not exempt from the kinds of things that create stress, that create worry and anxiety in our lives, because all of us experienced a global pandemic.
Yeah.
And there were a lot of things that we had to worry about. Or, well, we didn't have to, but there were a lot of things available for us to worry about related to the pandemic.
Yeah.
The economy right now and how that's impacting everybody's budgets and financial situations. There's economic stressors on everybody right now, Christian or not. And then, of course, personal struggles that you have and things that you're going to be going through on a more personal level, all of that creates anxiety and worry, whether you're a Christian or not.
Yeah.
But what is supposed to make us different as Christians is how we deal with those worries, how we handle those catalysts for worry. And I wanted to read from Philippians chapter 4 because I think the Apostle Paul has some, through the inspiration of the Spirit, has some really important words for us about how we handle the anxiety and worry. Not just stop worrying. It's not that simple. But he gives us the formula for dealing with it. And it's in Philippians chapter 4, and it starts with verse 6. And it says, "Do not be anxious about anything, but in everything by prayer and supplication with thanksgiving, let your requests be made known to God, and the peace of God, which surpasses all understanding, will guard your hearts and your minds in Christ Jesus." Dealing with worry and anxiety, the first tool available to us, the first step in that process, I think, has to be prayer.
Yeah.
When we can take it to God, when we can go to Him and converse with Him about it, laying those burdens at His feet, laying the stressors that are in our lives, just handing it off to Him.
Yeah.
Man, that's such a valuable tool.
Well, and even with you just saying it, it just sounds peaceful. And that's what Paul describes it as. I mean,
It is.
Doesn't get much better than that. If you've got something that is tearing you apart, if you could just give it to somebody else and let them worry about it.
Right.
You can do that with God. Now, it might not work as fast or as easy as you want it to, but that's where there's another thing at your disposal.
Right.
As a Christian, you're surrounded by a family of brothers and sisters, people who have likely been through a lot of what you have been through, who can help you.
Exactly.
It is so important for us to take advantage of that. It is, you want to, if you want to hold it in and try to figure it out on your own, I get it, but man, there is such value in seeking counsel from wiser people, because it likely will help you overcome whatever anxiety or worry that you have faster.
That's right. And I think that that the church family being available to us is something we neglect too often.
Oh man, absolutely. So when I was putting my notes together, I thought of this song. It's called "God's Family." It's an old hymn. I don't know that we've sang it. Next time I lead singing, you can best bet we're going to sing it. Do you think that one's on our known list?
Oh yeah, they know it here.
But I'm going to read you the chorus. It's very reminiscent of Ecclesiastes 3. But the writer, I don't know who the writer of this song was, but it goes like this. Sometimes we laugh together, sometimes we cry, sometimes we share together heartaches and sighs. Sometimes we'll dream together of how it will be when we all get to heaven, God's family. I think the laughing together and sometimes crying together we can do. That's pretty easy. We know somebody's hurting. We can cry with them. It's easy to laugh with people. But that sharing those heartaches and sighs, that can be the part where we are like, I'm not doing that. I'm not letting this person know my weakness. Do you know the people I know the most about? My family members.
Right.
And my goal, because I love them, is to help them. That is the relationship we need to have with our church family. We need to be able to feel comfortable sharing whatever struggle it is I'm going with, whether it doesn't even have to be worry. But I need to feel comfortable going to somebody and seeking, again, counsel. That way they can help me overcome this. And you know what the first thing they're probably going to say to you is, can I pray with you?
Yeah.
And then you've got two people praying about the situation.
Right.
It's just double power. No.
That's right. Well, and that's the whole idea, is to share together, to pray together, to support each other, bear each other's burdens. Galatians 6. I mean, that's what being a part of the family of God is all about.
Yeah. And it's a whenever you need it. At the end of our sermons, we offer an invitation, and it's
right.
Whatever your need is, let it be known as we stand and as we sing. That's kind of that's what I say when I end my sermons. Yeah. I don't know what else to say. That's what I always heard. So it is something that we have access to at all times. Like we don't just stop being family.
Right.
When the doors close, like it's 100% of the time we have access to it, which should give us a little bit of comfort.
Well, I hope that what you have heard today, as we have discussed, Am I a Worrier, is that it's not uncommon for worry to be a part of our lives, but what we should acknowledge as Christians, as a part of our identity as followers of Jesus, is that we have unique ways of dealing with worry and anxiety.
Yeah.
And through the prayer that we can have, the communication that we can have with God, and through the support that we can have in the family of God. And I think it's important that we acknowledge that worry and anxiety is just going to be a part of our lives, but we can deal with it in different ways. Although, at the same time, also acknowledging there are some things that we can stop worrying about.
Yeah.
As Jesus said, like you mentioned in the Sermon on the Mount, the clothing and the food, the things that trust God. We've got to learn to trust God to take care of us, to take care of the things that are out of our control, and let Him deal with those things, and then pray about the rest, or pray about it all.
Yeah.
All right. Anything else?
I got one last thing.
All right.
The going back to the lyrics of God's family, sharing. We can share what is troubling us individually right now. I can also share what troubled me in the past. And the reason that I might want to do that is because it will help somebody else.
Right. If somebody is dealing with the same thing, yeah.
That's part of getting to know your family. And if there's something that I've gone through, and I know that while I was going through that, I didn't want anybody to know about it. I wanted to take care of it myself. But looking back, I wish that I had somebody to help me get through that. Be that somebody for somebody else.
Right.
Because, again, if there's a problem that you've got in your life, there's probably somebody that's already gone through it. And if you've gone through it, help somebody else get through it.
Definitely. All right. Well, we appreciate you tuning in to this week's episode. We pray that it has been beneficial to you and that it will help you grow in your identity as a follower of Jesus. Have a blessed day.